Welcome to Oper8 podcast, where we talk about alternative weed control solutions identified by 8 operational groups from 7 countries in Europe. The operational groups represent farming organizations, applied researchers, and academic institutions from the Mediterranean, Atlantic, and Nordic areas to ensure a balanced representation of different production systems across Europe. Our main objective is to communicate alternative weed control solution of each operational group to key stakeholders through networks across the EU. I introduce myself. I'm Lorenzo Tramacere, the National Network Operator for Italy, and today I'm going to interview Professor Daniele Antichi, the responsible in charge for Oper8 for the University of Pisa. Our talk will be about the OG EOCONCHIF, the OG case study that the University of Pisa brought to the thematic network of Oper8. So, Daniele, do you want to introduce the OG farms and the practice study there during the EOCONCHIF project? And moreover, how this practice has been involved in Oper8?
Well, our operational group was funded by the regional government of Tuscany within the frame of the Rural Development Program. We are in central Italy, in a very special region for wine production, and our OG tackled indeed weed control in vineyards. The OG took a lot of inspiration from similar operational groups developed in other countries, particularly in France, and the farmers asked our university to deal with the weed management on a key area, namely the under-row space. You should consider that soil management is a critical issue indeed in our region, and especially in vine farms. This is because vines are grown on marginal soils, on slopy fields, and our region is characterized by heavy rainfall in fall-winter, so the risk of soil erosion is severe indeed. That is why recently many vine growers moved to soil management entailing covering the ground with spontaneous vegetation or sown cover crops. Anyway, this trend is happening especially as regards to the inter-row space, whereas the under-row space is usually managed through herbicides in integrated farms or by mechanical weeding in organic farms. The consortium of the OG was made of few farms, actually only 4, all based in the province of Pisa. But the good point was they were 50% organic and 50% IPM based. In the OG, we tested 2 major innovations, namely the use of pelargonic acid as a bioherbicide and the use of actual self-reseeding cover crops in the intra-row space. This latter resulted to be the most interesting solution and was included also in the activities of Oper8. In the thematic network, we established 2 farms of the operational group, namely Monte Rosola and Podere Spazzavento, as demonstration sites for the solution, and we are organizing there demo activities, as for instance field visits. The farmers were also involved as key stakeholders of the national network established in the project. Together with them, our goal is to widespread the technique so that to reduce the reliance on herbicides and mechanical weeding among vine farms all over Italy.
Okay, very interesting topic and so ambitious purpose, but technically, could you explain to the public what does the practice consist of?
It is an amazing solution indeed. You know, I am very much in favor of agroecological solutions where you exploit the potential of natural resources to deliver ecosystem services in cropping systems, such as weed control, as in this case, without relying on fossil energy demanding solutions. Consider that vine growers in the Mediterranean have one priority when they plan the management of the intra-row space in vineyards, that is, to avoid at most competition in summer for water and nutrients in the soil. That is why they normally seek for zero threshold for weeds on this narrow space. If not spraying herbicides, also tilling repeatedly the soil over the season is not good anyway, as it makes the soil prone to soil erosion and there will be increased mineralization rate of organic carbon. Our innovation, co-designed with the partners of the AOG, is based on the use of a special kind of cover crop, an annual self-reseeding cover crop. Specifically, we tested one species, the subterranean clover. It is a forage legume widespread among farmers in the region that bears the capacity to reseed itself and establish a permanent ground cover for up to 4 years. Practically, in the first year, the farmers should till the soil finely to prepare the seed bed for the clover in the 10 centimeters across the vine rows, and then manually seed the clover in autumn. The clover germinates and starts to cover the soil as a living mulch, that is, a green living plant. Then, in the next spring, around the middle of June, the clover starts to bloom, and the flowers redirect downwards to the soil, penetrate the shallowest layers, and release the seeds directly into the ground. The plants then die and pass the summer as a dead mulch, that is, a thick layer of dead plants covering the soil surface without competing with the vines. This is incredibly important because, this way, the clover doesn't compete with the crop and contributes to the weed control and water conservation. The mulch, indeed, covering the soil, impedes the sunlight from penetrating down to the soil surface, and this hardens the germination and growth of most of the weeds present in the intra-row space. Another amazing behavior of our clover appears when, after summer, soon as some raindrops fall down to the soil, the seeds of the clover germinate and cover again the soil as a living mulch, and so for the second, the third, and possibly also a fourth year. Farmers may love this technique, and they can save a lot of money by avoiding expensive intra-row weeding operations, and also reaching the goal of keeping the soil continuously covered by vegetation, maintaining soil fertility, and contributing so to global warming mitigation. Farmers may love this technique, as they can save a lot of money by avoiding expensive intra-row weeding operations, and also reaching the goal of keeping the soil continuously covered by vegetation, maintaining soil fertility, and contributing to global warming mitigation. You shouldn't forget that this clover is a nitrogen-fixing plant, so most of the nitrogen it needs doesn't come from the soil, but is fixed from the atmosphere, and it could be even made available for the roots of the vines during the vegetative season.
Seems to be a win-win strategy. However, is there any constraint about the use of this technique? If yes, which ones?
Well, actually, there might be some limitations due to specific soil and climate conditions, as well as for mechanization issues. Subterranean clover might be not adapted to all soil and climatic conditions. Therefore, in different environments, different crops with similar characteristics could be suggested. Other annual self-reseeding crops are, for instance, some medicago species. Moreover, barefoot trefoil or perennial grasses may be valuable alternatives. Anyway, despite the results from few researches are available in the literature, the market availability of different locally adapted genotypes of such minor crops is not very high due to economic constraints. Another limitation is the lack of specific sowing machines for this kind of solution. Nevertheless, in the OG, a prototype of mechanical sowing machine able to do the sowing of both the subclover in the intra-row space and of a mixture of different cover crops in the inter-row space was developed. Unfortunately, the sowing machine was not optimized due to lack of resources and was not able to do a perfect and regular placement of the seeds. Anyway, the idea on how to build a different concept of machine is pretty clear for us. And in Oper8, we are working also to reinforce our collaborations with agro-industry companies and farmers to co-develop a new prototype. Finally, we observed that for a cover crop stand that should last for 3-4 years, the sowing is the key technical aspect. Actually, besides seed distribution, also covering completely the seeds with few millimeters of soil is another technical aspect that farmers should carefully consider. Keeping the seeds of the clover not fully covered by soil will increase indeed the risk of seed predation or poor establishment. Proper machinery, chosen based on local soil conditions, is necessary to perform correctly seed bed preparation, but also answer seed coverage.
Thank you for listening to us today. We have more interesting episodes where we talk more about alternative weed control from different countries in Europe. More precisely, in the next episode, we will talk about the potential of cover crops as a powerful tool to reduce the need for chemical weed control in both arable and vineyard cropping systems in Mediterranean areas.